Canadians have nicknamed it C-Day, the day the sale and use of recreational cannabis was legalised. At midnight, Canada became just the second country in the world to give the green light to the drug. The first was Uruguay, which legalised recreational cannabis in 2013. The change of law in Canada fulfills a 2015 campaign promise by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, the leader of the governing Liberal Party. In neighbouring America, 9 states have legalised cannabis, as well as the District of Columbia. It's estimated as much as $400 million per year will be raised in tax revenues from the sale of the drug. Well, let's discuss this now with Wayne Hall, a professor at King's College London and the University of Queensland who looks at drug addiction, and in Toronto, Daniel Beer, a professor in criminal justice at Humber College. Good to have you both with us. What do you think happens now? What does this mean for Canada?
Well, I think it'll be slow to be implemented. I think there's 35 stores that'll be open across the whole of Canada, and in some states like British Columbia, there's 1 retail outlet. So it'll probably be slow to ramp up, and I think people are saying it'll probably be 10 years before we expect to see the black market disappear, and probably 10 years before we have a clear idea of how the legalisation will work in Canada.
It feels like this is a major change for Canadian society, though.
I think it is. It's a consequential change. There'll be no way back. I mean, once you create a legal industry, it won't be it will be impossible to put it back in the box and return to the policy before. So it's a pretty irreversible change.
Is it concerning? Particularly, I think, for young people.
Well,
there is this permissive society and they end up
Yeah, well, I guess that's where most of the concern will be about uptake amongst young people. There are clearly benefits as well in terms of reducing criminalisation of users and eventually eliminating the black market and criminality around cannabis. So those are to be recognised, but I guess from a public health point of view, the concern would be about possible increases in use.
We'll come back to that, but let's bring in Daniel on what this does mean for policing and for the legal system. Daniel.
Well, I think this is a great opportunity for policing. Right now, about 48,000 Canadians were arrested last year for cannabis-related offences. About 80% of those were for simple possession. So if you think about the number of working hours for police that this will free up, they can now focus on the issues that really matter to the community. Here in Toronto, we had what was called the Summer of the Gun, where we had an increase in gun crime and gun-related murders. And the big call was to have more police on the streets. Freeing up cannabis offences from that time for police officers will really make that happen.
And in other places, Daniel, other states in America and countries which have decriminalised marijuana, has there also been a drop in other crimes too?
There has. In fact, Colorado and Washington State have both seen significant decreases in violent crime, particularly around areas where there's a cannabis retail dispensary. What you're doing is you're breaking up the black market, and you're not allowing criminal gangs to be involved anymore. And the nice thing is that, when there's a dispute with a legal business, the courts become the battleground for this, not street corners.
How is the government, Wayne, going to handle this in terms of public health issues, in terms of tackling the safe use of marijuana particularly?
Well, there's certainly a lot of the rhetoric around it is public health oriented. There's the bans on promotion and advertising, for example. There's plain packaging, health warnings, age restrictions on purchase, and at the moment fairly tight controls around retail outlets.
But there's going to be a lot of pressure now. This is going to be a legal industry. They want to make money, the people who are in it.
Well, exactly, and I guess that's from a public health point of view the major concern. All we know about what's happened with alcohol and tobacco, that the industry is already pushing back against the taxes, saying they're too high to compete with black market prices. They're pushing back on advertising restrictions. They're wanting opportunities for people to use cannabis in public places and various other things. So, yes, you've got an industry. The alcohol industry is already investing. Tobacco's sniffing about becoming involved. So, one would expect there to be some sort of rollback of the protective policies that we have now.
Daniel, is there a concern, I wonder, about driving? It seems like that's going to be difficult to police, drug-impaired driving.
Indeed it is. The new law sets a limit of 2 nanograms per litre in the blood, which is much lower than most US states have done, which has at 5 nanograms per litre. There's a whole system of what we call drug recognition experts, who are police officers trained to detect when someone's intoxicated, in addition to field devices that test oral fluid. The problem with the field devices is that they have a propensity for a false positive and don't work well when it's quite cold, which is kind of a problem in Canada. So it is something that we're trying to deal with. But I think that the way through this isn't through law enforcement and the criminal justice system. That has one role to play, but I think it's about setting normative behaviors, encouraging responsible use, and really providing the public with good, solid education, not to scare them, but to inform them and give them the opportunity to act in an adult and responsible way.
Daniel Bear, Wayne Hall. The discussion will continue, I'm sure. We'll have to check in again soon. Thank you very much for joining us here on GMT.